The Book of Nechemyah, Chapter 7. After the wall had been rebuilt, and I had set up its doors, and the gatekeepers, singers, and Leviim had been appointed, I put my kinsman Hanani in charge of Yerushalayim, along with Hananyah, the commander of the citadel. For he was a faithful man, and he feared God more than most. I said to them, "The gates of Yerushalayim are not to be opened until the sun is hot, and while the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors, and you put up the bars. Appoint watchmen from among those living in Yerushalayim, assign each one his time to guard, and have each one serving near his own house." The city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not been rebuilt. My God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the leaders, and the people, so that they could be registered according to their genealogies. I located the record of the genealogies of those who had come up at the beginning and found written in it, "Here is a list of the people of the province who had been exiled, carried off to Babel by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, but who later returned from exile and went up to Yerushalayim and Yehudah, each to his own city. They went with Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nechemyah, Azariah, Raamiah, Nachmani, Mordechai, Bilshan, Misperet, Bigvai, Nechum, and Baana. The number of men from the people of Israel, descendants of Perosh, 2,172. Descendants of Shephatiah, 372. Descendants of Erach, 652. Descendants of Pachat Moav, from the descendants of Yeshua and Joab, 2,818. Descendants of Elam, 1,254. Descendants of Zatu, 845. Descendants of Zakkai, 760. Descendants of Binui, 648. Descendants of Bevai, 628. Descendants of Azgad, 2,322. Descendants of Adonikam, 667. Descendants of Bigvai, 2,067. Descendants of Aden, 655. Descendants of Ater, of Yechizkiah, 98. Descendants of Hashum, 328. Descendants of Bezai, 324. Descendants of Hariph, 112. Descendants of Givon, 95. The people of Bet Lechem and Netophah, 188. People of Anatot, 128. People of Bet Azmavet, 42. People of Kiryat Yerim, Kephira, and Be'eret, 753. People of Ramah and Giva, 621. People of Michmas, 122. People of Bet El and Ai, 123. People from the other Nevo, 52. People from the other Elam, 1,254. Descendants of Haram, 320. Descendants of Yercho, 345. Descendants of Lod, Hadid, and Ono, 721. Descendants of Sana'a, 3,930. The Kohanim, descendants of Yediah, of the house of Yeshua, 973. Descendants of Immer, 1,052. Descendants of Pashchur, 1,247. Descendants of Haram, 1,017. The Leviim, descendants of Yeshua, of Kadmiel, of the descendants of Hadva, 74. The singers, descendants of Asaph, 148. The gatekeepers, descendants of Shallum, descendants of Ater, descendants of Talmon. descendants of Akuv, descendants of Hatita, and descendants of Shove, 138. The temple servants, the descendants of Zicha, descendants of Hasufa, descendants of Tabaat, descendants of Kiros, descendants of Sia, descendants of Padan, descendants of Levana, descendants of Hagavah, descendants of Salme, descendants of Hanan, descendants of Giddo, descendants of Gachar, descendants of Re'ah, descendants of Rezin, descendants of Nakoda, descendants of Gazam, descendants of Uzzah, descendants of Pasiach, descendants of Biseh, descendants of Meunim, descendants of Nephishim, descendants of Bakbuk, descendants of Hakufa, descendants of Harha, descendants of Baslit, descendants of Mechida, descendants of Harsha, descendants of Barkus, descendants of Sisera, descendants of Tamach, descendants of Naziach, and descendants of Hatifa. The descendants of Shlomo's servants, descendants of Sotai, descendants of Sopharet, the descendants of Perida, descendants of Yaala, descendants of Darkon, descendants of Giddo, descendants of Shephatiah, descendants of Hatil, descendants of Chocheret, Hazayim, and descendants of Ammon. All the temple servants and the descendants of Shlomo's servants numbered 392. The following went up from Tel Melech, Tel Harsha, Karuv, Aden, and Immer, but they could not state which fathers' clans they and their children belonged to, so it was not clear whether they were from Israel. Descendants of Deliah, descendants of Toviah, and descendants of Nechoda, 642. And of the Kohanim, descendants of Haviah, descendants of Hakaz, and the descendants of Barzillai, who took a wife from the daughters of Barzillai the Giladi, and was named after them. These tried to locate their genealogical records, but they weren't found. Therefore they were considered defiled, and were not allowed to serve as Kohanim. The Tershata told them not to eat any of the especially holy food until a Kohen appeared who could consult the Urim and Tumim. The entire assembly numbered 42,360, not including their male and female slaves, of whom there were 7,337. They also had 245 male and female singers. Their horses numbered 736, their mules 245, their camels 435, and their donkeys 6,720. Some from among the heads of fathers' clans made contributions for the work. The Tershata contributed to the treasury 1,000 gold darkmanim, 21 pounds, 50 basins, and 530 tunics for the Kohanim. Some of the heads of fathers' clans gave into the treasury for the work 20,000 gold darkmanim, 420 pounds, and 2,200 silver manim, 1 1/3 tons. The rest of the people gave 20,000 gold darkmanim, 2,000 silver manim, about 1 1/4 tons, and 67 tunics for the Kohanim. So the Kohanim, the Leviim, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people, the temple, servants, and all Israel lived in their towns. When the 7th month arrived, after the people of Israel had resettled in their towns.